Hello, everyone. My name is Richard Wallace, a student at the University of Texas at San Antonio, majoring in digital communications. Today, my group and I will be going over chapters 11 and 12 of the Non-Designer's Design Book by Robin Williams. We will be discussing these chapters in hopes of educating our audience on some of these common design topics. We will discuss different design methods that are important to know for our future projects. For example, we'll be going over a few fonts, sizing, structure, direction, color, and a few more. So let's jump right into it. So to begin with, let me go ahead and move myself up there. To begin with, I'm gonna start off with Old Style. Old Style is one of the earlier fonts, and it is used for more of a body text. You really don't want to use these for, well, I'm sorry, they're good for body text. They're real clean, crisp, they're easy to read, easy to follow along with. You won't lose your audience if you use an old style text. Some of the characteristics of old style is most, one of the ones that stands out most to me is the diagonal stress. So on the diagonal stress, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse right here, but this line that goes through the thinnest parts of the letter. So that line right there is actually diagonal. It even shows it right here as well. So that is what a diagonal stress means. There are also the serifs are also slanted. So that is these right over here. On the lowercase letters, you can see how they have those little slanted peaks pointing out. On some of the other ones I'll explain later, you'll notice how they're more flat and narrow. But for now, you can see how they're curved and slanted. Uh, the old style also contains brackets. So right here where the G kind of flows out, it has a rounded area. Um, and another part that you could look at is the thick thin transition. So for old style, the thick thin transition would be moderate right here. You can see that transition happen right there. So it goes moderately thick to moderately thin. You know, nothing too crazy, nothing too dramatic. And some examples of old style fonts would be Gaudi, Palatino, and Times, so like Times New Roman or something along those lines. Uh, and for next, we'll have modern. Modern is used for more headlines, stuff like that. You really don't want to use modern when having to deal with the body text because it's very easy for the audience to get lost and really not want to read along anymore. Some of the characteristics for the modern text is vertical stress. So as I stated earlier, um, the old style had a diagonal stress. This one's vertical, as you can see right here. It goes straight up and down through the thinnest points of the lettering. The serifs, like I stated earlier, are going to be thin and horizontal, like you see right here, um, just flat. And if you put it in with a body text, modern text, if you put it in with a body, some of this might get lost in some of the text, especially if the text is real small. So these work a lot better. Oops, sorry. These work a lot better whenever the text is real big. So like I said, headlines or titles, something like that. There's no bracketing right here. It's just nice and crisp, sharp as edges right there. The thick thin transition is radical. So as you can see, it becomes a very thin to very wide. Let's see, it shows it right here. So on this O, it's very thin right here, and on this other side, very wide. Some examples of this would be Bodoni and Did It, and this is actually Did It right here. So if you want to look after that, and those are my two topics: is old style and modern. Thank you.
Now that we've talked about old style and modern, we're going to talk about the slab serif and sans serif fonts. So to start off, we're going to talk about a serif, and this is visual representation of what a serif is. The one over here that has the circles on it is the font with serifs, and the one right here is the sans serif. So basically a serif is the small decorative lines on the typeface. It's just a little extension that is created, and it makes it look more decorative. It looks bolder. It's a little easier to read when it's in big format, and serif fonts generally tend to be the same thickness all the way through, or at least the ones I'm covering, the slab and sans serifs. So let's move on to the next slide. Slab serif is a font style that features thick and heavy serifs. The emphasis on the serifs makes the text easier to read, and it makes it stand out more. I know this one isn't the best example, but I did want to throw that in there because it did have very exaggerated slab serif, facing. And the one over here, I think, was the better example just because it shows the consistency all the way around, as well as the thick slabs on the top and bottom. And slab serif font actually gained popularity in the early 1800s when advertising first came into the scene. It is a little easier to read than the old style and modern fonts, and so it's very good for big headlines. But it is not recommended to use for the smaller, the body text, just because the extra serifs in there can get a little confusing to your eyes at times, and it's really bold, so kind of isn't the easiest to read. It's more recommended for, big text. So now let's move on to the sans serif. And unlike the slab serif, sans serif does not have the decorative emphasis. It's simple, and it's a clean font family that is used, or font style that is used for a minimalist approach. Here's a couple examples. It is really popular in modern advertisements. I know it first gained popularity in the early 2000s, and so you can see a lot of brands do use it for their branding, as well as like big headlines that you want to make look really simple in advertisements. For example, this Johnny Walker one is all caps, and it looks really clean, really minimalistic. Like the Moto one looks really minimalistic, and they're all very stylized, and they're not super stylized, but they do have some style to them, and so it makes it interesting. Sans serif is really good for body copy just because it's the easiest to read out of all of the fonts or font families. And if you want to use it for a headline, that's perfectly okay. It's not the most eye-catching font out there, but it is effective. And next, I'm going to show you just some examples. As you can see, these are some ads from the early 2000s. The branding and everything does use sans serifs, and it's super easy to read. You know exactly what you're looking at. And that is slab and sans serifs.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lauren Terrazas. Now that we've discussed slab and sans serif, let's discuss script and decorative fonts. So to begin, script fonts mimic cursed handwriting, and decorative fonts include embellishments and/or ornaments. The incorporation of script and decorative fonts can either make or break your work. Have you ever received one of those fancy wedding invitations in the mail that are just so impossible to read that you gave up and said, "I'm just not going"? That is a perfect example of how overusing these fonts can take away from the message that is trying to be conveyed. The textbook states, "Scripts are like cheesecake. They should be used sparingly so that nobody gets sick." Decorative fonts are easy to identify if the thought of reading an entire book makes you want to throw up a little bit. You can probably put that font in the decorative pot or category. Whether you are creating an advertisement, a flyer, a brochure, whatever the case may be, it is fun to get creative, but always remember to keep things tasteful and remember that less is ultimately more. If you try putting out a wedding invitation completely in, that script handwriting that's just so hard to read, your audience and whoever you're sending that invitation to is not going to have an easy time reading the invitation, and they're probably not going to even know what it says, or who knows if they'll even go. So now that I've given you a little bit of background information on script and decorative fonts, I am going to play a short 30-second clip of this video, just going over the same idea. So let's get started with that.
Fonts, script and decorative. Coming up next on A Minute Smarter. Fonts are designed to mimic handwriting. They work well as feature elements in a design, but shouldn't be used for large areas of body copy because they're often difficult to read. Decorative fonts can be the most fun of all and are often used as feature design elements or as inspiration for custom logo designs. Again, because of their difficult to read nature, decorative fonts should be used sparingly and never the choice when creating large areas of text. Both of these typographic classifications will steal the show in partner.
Okay, so that was just 30 seconds of the video. It's a short video anyways, but I wanted to have enough time to show you guys some real world examples of script and decorative fonts. So on to the next slide. On the left-hand side, you can see examples of script fonts that we see in our everyday lives. So for example, the Ford logo would be considered a script font, same thing with the Cadillac logo and the Olive Garden logo. But you can see without their little advertisements, they do include other easier to read fonts. That way, the audience, whoever is being presented these advertisements, isn't overwhelmed and they can still convey a message. On the right-hand side, we see examples of decorative fonts such as Chick-fil-A, Cheetos, and Walt Disney. Like the video stated, it is important to realize that these script fonts and decorative fonts are intended to be used as featured elements.
So type size is pretty self-explanatory. It's really just the size of the typeface. Mainly this is used to try to grab attention or to try to add a bit of a pop to a specific ad. Like for the pop of the Nissan Sentra ad, this one is really just kind of, they made that size of the Nissan Sentra bigger than the other ones just to show that they're introducing the new Nissan Sentra. And to kind of bring that first and foremost to the center. Next is the Kobe Bryant every shoe commercial ad from Adidas. So the reason why they made the Kobe Bryant text even larger than the Adidas logo is to kind of really get the attention of, hey, this is a major basketball player who is being endorsed by Adidas. Maybe this is a good way. That's a good way to get fans and maybe even haters to look at that ad. And the other one is one that I actually saw when I was scrolling by Facebook. So this one is actually a Chipotle ad to kind of get people to realize, hey, we're open at this specific location. I know the pandemic's coming on, but we're open. It's an attention grabber. From there, we move on to type weight, which is really just the thickness of the typeface. Usually, if it's thicker or bold, the way that I've always seen that is that it's more bold of a statement. So the Ready, Set, Save by the Target ad is really just going to be to kind of tell everybody, hey, Black Friday is going on. This is our Black Friday ad. Next up is going to be the Dive In, which is kind of a play off of the words of diving into a pool while also eating this the seafood. So it's really to get kind of an attention and kind of use that to be as kind of a call to action to kind of go to that store or go to that restaurant. And then the other one is really just kind of a way of the last one I should say is really the way to what is it? It's the way Apple really is branding themselves of thinking differently to kind of put it out there that this is our branding and this is very bold of us to be able to do that. So that's really going to be what type weight is. And lastly is type structure, which is really how the typeface is built. You could kind of relate this to fonts, but it is more than just font. It's also how you're using the typeface. To start off, we'll start with the Red Lobster one at the top right for Create Your Own Ultimate Feast. So that one is really just kind of uniform. It is to try to stay with the brand, and it really is just staying stayed uniform and have that structure to it whenever it has all of that together. The next one is the PS5 logo. So the PS5 one it stays on brand, and it also lets you know that this is the PlayStation 5 and that it's the only word on the entire ad, so it's really just using that font as something recognizable for gamers and maybe even non-gamers. And then the last one is the Above Beyond Ultra, or the Fender ad. So it's basically trying to tell you to go beyond what you've been able to play before. And the way that the Above, Beyond, and Ultra is staggered is to add depth, which in my opinion is trying to add depth to your guitar playing. And those are those three.
Now that we've discussed type size, weight, and type structure, let's discuss type form, type direction, and type color. When talking about type form, it refers to the shape of the lettering. In the photos that you see, there represents two different types of forms. There's capitalization and Romans versus italics. Differentiating the types of capitalization helps the reader comprehend what is being said, along with making it more capable of catching the message. Italics is another way to create emphasis on a certain word so the reader can make a better connection to the message. Next, we have direction. Slanting in direction is not always good unless you have a specific purpose for doing so, and it fits with the delivered message. When there is a change of direction, you want to make sure you emphasize the writing so there is purpose to what is being demonstrated. This can cause texture as well in your work, making it more interactive and stand out to the reader. So in the photos that you see, there's one on the right corner, and it says "Going Over the Edge," which is a book cover. And so it is being slanted towards the bottom to show negative, as in referring to the book as there, going over the edge is a negative connotation. Next, and finally, we have the type of color. In typographical communication, color is one of the most important tools. It does not only provide contrast, focus, and order, but an emotion can also be depicted by color. Color may reinforce an identity from the branding viewpoint, introducing a sense of familiarity. So as you can see from the pictures of all the different brands, they are all a specific color that they stick to, so that way it is constant and memorable to people who use those brands and are associated with those brands. Also, you can see in the bottom corner all the different colors and their associations along with their moods. So black, for example, its association is for mystery, and for its mood is confident, calm. For white, its association is purity, light, and for mood, it can be cold and unfriendly. So each one of these types can be used to create importance and emphasis to what the illustrator, author, advertising company, etc. is trying to portray onto its audience. In conclusion, we have demonstrated both chapters 11 and 12. We were able to talk about the importance of understanding these types of typographics and its impact on readers. It is not just putting words on a paper or a color screen and a nice background. If there is no purpose of correlation to your message and for the type of reader you're attracting, then it is an ineffective process. Thank you.